The year is 1656, and the city of Naples is suffocating under a biological catastrophe. A devastating outbreak of the bubonic plague is sweeping through the vibrant Italian streets, transforming one of Europe's most bustling cultural hubs into a sprawling graveyard. In a matter of months, the disease will claim the lives of over half the city's population. It is a time of unimaginable grief, chaos, and a terrifying realization of how powerless humanity truly is against the forces of nature. Living through this nightmare is Salvator Rosa. Today, art historians remember Rosa as a pioneer of the Baroque style, a flamboyant rebel, a poet, a satirist, and an actor. He was a man known for his electric personality, someone who wanted to be recognized as a high intellectual. But the plague does not care about your intellect, and it certainly does not care about your reputation. In a remarkably short span of time, the plague takes Rosa's infant son, Rosalvo. It takes his brother, it takes his sister, her husband, and 5 of their children. Suddenly, the vibrant, rebellious artist is broken. In a heartbreaking letter to a friend, Rosa writes that heaven has struck him in such a way that shows him all human remedies are useless, and that the least pain he feels is when he weeps as he writes. Out of this absolute, crushing despair comes a painting. A massive canvas that doesn't just depict sadness, but builds an entire architecture of despair. We are looking at Human Frailty, an uncompromising meditation on the futility of our existence. When you first stand before this enormous canvas, which towers at over 6 feet high, you are immediately swallowed by the nocturnal gloom. The light in this painting is harsh, theatrical, and almost violent in the way it isolates the figures against a pitch-black void. Your eyes are immediately drawn to the center of the composition, where we see a young woman, a mother, pale and exhausted, wearing a wreath of white roses in her hair. She sits in the darkness, cradling a newborn infant on her lap. In any other era of art, this specific framing would be a Madonna and child. It would be a celebration of new life, a beacon of divine hope, and a promise for the future. But look directly behind her. Emerging from the suffocating shadows is a terrifying skeletal figure with massive dark wings. This is the angel of death. And yet, this grim reaper isn't attacking. He isn't wielding a scythe to strike the mother and child down in a fit of violence. He is doing something far more methodical and far more chilling. He is leaning over the mother, his bony fingers gently but firmly gripping the fragile wrist of the newborn baby. He is guiding the infant's hand, forcing the child to write something with a quill on a large scroll of parchment. You have to ask yourself, what could death possibly want a newborn baby to write? The infant, guided by the inescapable hand of death, is signing a contract. It is a legally binding agreement made with the universe the very second we are born. If you look closely at the scroll, you can actually read the Latin words that Salvator Rosa has inscribed. Conceptio culpa, nasi pena, labor vita, necesse mori. Conception is a sin, birth is pain, life is toil, death is a necessity. It is one of the most bleak, uncompromising statements ever put to canvas. The mother looks away, her eyes heavy with an incredibly profound sorrow. She is entirely helpless. She cannot stop the skeleton, she cannot tear up the contract, and she cannot save her child. Even the roses in her hair, traditional symbols of beauty and love, are in full bloom, which means their beautiful petals are already on the verge of wilting and dying. This is the ultimate tragedy of human existence that Rosa is wrestling with in the wake of losing his entire family. The very moment you are given life, you are simultaneously handed your death sentence. But Rosa doesn't stop with this central, horrifying legal agreement. He surrounds this grim contract with a chaotic, almost bizarre nursery of other children and strange objects. It feels like a cluttered room in the dark, filled with things that seemingly do not belong together. If we look down to the lower left, sitting by the mother's feet, we see a child cheerfully blowing bubbles into the air. Over on the right, another toddler is carefully holding a stick, lighting a bundle of tow, which is an early kind of firework or flare. At first glance, this is completely jarring. Why are children playing in the presence of a giant, terrifying skeleton? Why are we looking at delicate soap bubbles and festive fireworks in a painting about a horrific plague? These children are not just at play. They are speaking a very specific visual language called Vanitas, a branch of still life painting designed to act as a memento mori, a reminder of inevitable death. In the 17th century, these everyday objects were powerful philosophical tools used to talk about the extreme transience of our lives. The bubble being blown by the child is a direct visual reference to a famous Latin proverb of the era, Homo est bulla, man is but a bubble. Think about the nature of a soap bubble. It is perfectly spherical, it reflects the world beautifully, it catches the light in a rainbow of colors, and then, in a fraction of a second, it pops. It ceases to exist, leaving absolutely no trace that it was ever there. The child lighting the firework carries the exact same devastating message. A firework is a spectacular thing to witness. It burns with intense, blinding brilliance, drawing everyone's attention, but it entirely consumes itself in the process. It is over almost as soon as it begins. Through these playing children, Rosa is telling us that human life, no matter how bright, how beautiful, or how successful you think you are, is just a bubble on the wind. It is a fleeting spark in the dark. The deeper you look into the shadows of this painting, the more it feels like the darkness is looking back at you. Rosa has hidden figures in the gloom, silent witnesses to this tragic signing of the mortal contract. Down in the bottom left corner, sitting almost imperceptibly in the absolute dark, is an owl. The owl is looking directly out of the canvas, making unblinking eye contact with you, the viewer. What is a bird of prey doing in this domestic nightmare? In classical mythology, the owl is the trusted companion of Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom and knowledge. The owl can see perfectly in the dark. It sees the absolute truth of our mortality that we are normally blind to or choose to ignore. It knows that the contract the baby is signing is binding. But the owl is also a traditional harbinger of doom, a creature of the night that signals poor fortune and impending death. It sits there, stoic and calm, confirming the bleak reality that is unfolding right above its head. Now, let your eyes drift upward, into the deep shadows on the far right side of the canvas. Barely visible, picked out with just a few masterful, delicate brush strokes of lighter paint, is the cold stone face of a statue. It looks like an ancient, forgotten Roman ruin watching over the scene. But this isn't just background decoration to make the room look interesting. This is Terminus, the ancient Roman god of boundaries, borders, and limits. Terminus represents the ultimate boundary line, the absolute division between life and death. He is the immovable endpoint of all things. No matter how much you struggle against fate, no matter how brightly your personal firework burns, you will eventually reach Terminus. He is carved in cold, hard stone because the end is entirely fixed. It cannot be negotiated, delayed, or reasoned with. In the top left corner, hidden even deeper in the murk, there is the faint outline of a hippopotamus, a strange, exotic addition that art historians link to ancient Egyptian representations of chaos and the unpredictability of life. The plague was an unpredictable chaos that respected no boundaries, until you hit the final boundary of Terminus himself. To understand the sheer gravity and intelligence of this painting, we have to understand who Salvator Rosa was striving to be as an artist. He fiercely rejected the idea of being just a craftsman who painted nice, rugged landscapes for wealthy patrons. Rosa wanted to be recognized as a pittore filosofo, a painter-philosopher. He was deeply engaged with classical Stoic philosophy. Stoicism, especially the writings of the Roman philosopher Seneca, taught that a virtuous life requires us to accept the natural order of the universe, no matter how painful or unfair it seems. The Stoics believe that human beings suffer primarily because we try to fight fate. We suffer because we falsely believe we have control over our lives and our loved ones. Human frailty is Salvator Rosa's ultimate, heartbreaking Stoic manifesto. He is using the utter devastation of the Neapolitan plague and the unfathomable loss of his own son to visually manifest this harsh philosophical truth. The skeletal angel of death in this painting isn't malicious. It isn't angry or vengeful. It is just a fact of nature. It is simply enforcing the contract we all agree to by being born. Rosa is using his canvas as a piece of eloquent rhetoric, forcing himself and us to look at the absolute worst the universe has to offer, and to accept it without any comforting illusions. Even the way Rosa physically signs this painting is steeped in this heavy fatalism. Look at the very bottom edge of the canvas, right below the owl. Lying discarded on the ground is a sharp, menacing blade, a knife. And right there, engraved on the cold steel of the blade, are the initials S.R., Salvator Rosa. He doesn't sign his name elegantly in the corner, or on a beautiful scroll, or a bright ribbon. He literally carves his identity into an instrument of violence, severance, and finality. It is as if the artist is acknowledging that his own life, his own legacy, and his own art are perpetually living on the knife's edge, ready to be cut down at any moment. We have spent this entire time wading through absolute, suffocating darkness. We have looked at winged skeletons, inescapable contracts of doom, bubbles popping, owls of misfortune, and stone gods of death. You might be entirely justified in thinking that Salvator Rosa's worldview in 1656 was entirely devoid of light, and that there is absolutely no hope whatsoever to be found in this masterpiece. But Rosa is too brilliant a philosopher to leave us with nothing but a void. He leaves us with one final, incredibly subtle, and profoundly beautiful detail. If you look very closely at the space just above the playing children on the right, floating up into the murky, oppressive darkness, you will see a pair of delicate butterflies. They are small, fragile, and easily missed against the overwhelming gloom of the background. In both Christian and classical symbolism, the butterfly is the ultimate representation of the human soul. The caterpillar enters the dark, restrictive tomb of the chrysalis, only to miraculously emerge transformed, with wings capable of flight and freedom. Despite the heavy, inescapable weight of the skeleton's grip, despite the painful truth of the contract the baby is forced to sign, the butterflies are flying upward. They are escaping the frame. They are leaving the physical weight and the suffering of human frailty behind. Salvator Rosa's Human Frailty is not an easy painting to sit with. It is a masterpiece forged in the fires of unimaginable grief and personal devastation. It systematically strips away all of our comforting modern illusions about control, permanence, and security. It reminds us that we are just bubbles reflecting the light. We are fireworks burning fast, and we are fragile creatures signing our lives away from the moment we take our very first breath. But in facing that terrifying reality head-on, in painting the absolute darkness so vividly and intelligently, Rosa achieves a kind of philosophical triumph. He takes the chaotic, senseless pain of the plague and turns it into a timeless monument of understanding. He looks death directly in the empty eye sockets. He reads the brutal contract and he accepts the terms. And in doing so, he reminds us to appreciate the brilliant, fleeting spark of our own lives, right now, before the bubble pops.